A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. Jesus departed from there and came to his native place, accompanied by his disciples. When the Sabbath came, he began to teach in the synagogues, and many who heard him were astonished. They said, "Where did this man get all this? What kind of wisdom has been given him? What mighty deeds are wrought by his hands? Is he not the carpenter, the son of Mary, and the brother of James, and Joses, and Judas, and Simon? And are not his sisters here with us?" And they took offense at him. Jesus said to them, "A prophet is not without honor except in his native place, and among his own kin, and in his own house." So he was not able to perform any mighty deed there, apart from curing a few sick people by laying his hands on them. And he was amazed at their lack of faith. The Gospel of the Lord. In 9 days, the annual celebration of our great national pastime, the All-Star Game, comes to Cincinnati. And on the year that the All-Star Game comes here, it would be nice if our own Cincinnati Reds were having a great season with a lot of All-Stars, but we might have to be satisfied remembering the great teams and the great stars of the past. And thinking back in my own life, the first really great Reds team that I remember happened back in 1961 when Frank Robinson won the Most Valuable Player award and the Reds won the pennant. And then that year, they faced the great New York Yankees in the World Series. And so for the third game of the series in Cincinnati, the Yankee stars, Yogi Berra and Mickey Mantle and Whitey Ford and Bobby Richardson, came to Cincinnati, and the people here could see them in person. But I think the player they were more interested in than any other was the right fielder for the Yankees, a man who that year had set a new home run record for a single season, and his name, of course, was Roger Maris. And recently I read a biography of Roger Maris. He was born back in 1934, and he grew up in Fargo, North Dakota. And in 1953 he graduated from high school and he started playing in the minor leagues. And he played for 4 years in the minor leagues, and he hit a lot of home runs, but he did other things too. He hit for average, he was a really good base runner, he was a great right fielder, and he was a decent guy. He cheered his teammates, he married his high school sweetheart, he didn't carouse. They had 6 children, he was just totally devoted to them, and he was a practicing Catholic. And he played for 5 different teams when he was in the minor leagues, and each time he joined a team, their won-loss record improved after he joined them. And in 1957, he came up into the major leagues. He started out with the Cleveland Indians, and after a year and a half, he was traded to the Kansas City Athletics. And then after the 1959 season, the Yankees were interested in him because in 1958, they had won the World Series, but in 59, they kind of fell apart. They finished 15 games out of first place. And so they fired their manager, and they made a big trade, and they traded for Roger Maris. And in 1960, he had a really great year. He had 39 home runs, but he was also a Golden Glove right fielder, and at the end of the year, he was named the most valuable player in the American League. But most importantly, with him, the New York Yankees got back into the World Series. And then the following year, 1961, was the year that Maris and Mantle both chased Babe Ruth's home run record. And as he hit more and more home runs and got closer to the record, reporters and members of the press kept chasing Roger Maris around the clubhouse and at home and even into church, asking him all kinds of questions about him and the record. And Roger Maris just said, "Look, I hit home runs and I do everything else, but only to help the team. I don't do them to try to set any personal records. And the press was cynical. They wanted some great big celebrity, and all they got was this very simple young man from Fargo, North Dakota. And they wrote things about him that weren't very nice. And a lot of the fans either decided they wanted Mickey Mantle to break the record or for the record not to be broken at all. And on the final game of the season, Roger Maris finally hit his 61st home run to break the record, but Yankee Stadium was only half filled. And then, sadly for me, in the 1961 series, he hit a home run to win the third game for the Yankees, and of course they went on to win the series. And the following year, he had 33 home runs, and he drove in 100 runs, and the Yankees repeated as World Series champions. But it seemed like the reporters, all they would ask is, what's wrong with this guy? He hit 28 fewer home runs than he hit the year before, and they weren't happy with him. And the year after that, he had only 23 home runs, and after that, 26 home runs. But the Yankees kept winning the pennant in 63 and 64, but it didn't seem to matter. The fans and the press were all over Roger Maris. What's wrong with this guy? He's not putting out his best effort. And then in the 1965 season, early in the year, he slid into a base, and he injured his right hand. And the Yankees had x-rays taken, and there was a broken bone in his right hand. Except the Yankees didn't tell anybody. They didn't tell the fans, they didn't tell the press, and they didn't even tell Roger Maris. And so he played most of the season with a broken bone in his right hand. And of course, he didn't play very well, and the Yankees didn't play very well. They finished in 6th place. And at the end of the season, he had his own x-rays taken, and he had the bone chip removed from his hand, but it was too late. He could never grip the bat the same way. His great home run swing was gone, and he never hit more than 13 home runs in a season after that. And so after the next year, after 1966, the Yankees decided, well, we just got to get rid of this guy. And at the same time, over in the National League, the St. Louis Cardinals were having their own problems. They had a lot of great stars. They had Bob Gibson and Orlando Cepeda. But they just didn't seem to be able to win. They finished in 6th place. And after the season, their general manager looked over players who might be available, and the general manager thought he saw something, and he made one trade. He traded for Roger Maris, and so the next year Roger Maris was a Cardinal, and he still couldn't hit very many home runs, but he did the other things. He moved runners along, he got clutch hits, he was a good base runner and a great right fielder, and he was a joy to be with in the clubhouse. The players loved him, and the Cardinal fans loved him. And in the 2 years that he played for the Cardinals, they went to the World Series both times. And in 1967, with him having joined the team, they went from 6th place in the National League to champions of the World Series. And he retired after the 1968 season, and he'd only played for 12 years in the major leagues. But in those 12 years, in the American League and then in the National League, his team had gone to the World Series 7 times. And so today, when people look back on his baseball career, and when they look back on his life, they see something that the Yankees and their press and most of their fans never figured out. Roger Maris was a lot more than just the guy who hit 61 home runs in a season. He was a winner. And today in our gospel, the Nazarenes, the people of Jesus' hometown, start acting like a bunch of Yankee fans. What mighty deeds are wrought by his hands? Is he not just this carpenter who we know? They were indignant. They didn't see Christ as he truly was. And today we can ask ourselves, is there a little bit of Nazarene? Is there a little bit of a Yankee fan in us? We certainly know Christ well. We come to church and we hear in each gospel about something that Christ has done, mighty deeds of this sort or that. But then, if we don't see those deeds at work in the here and now, in our lives, we tend to overlook the meaning of them. They tell us who Christ is and why he has come to live among us. He is, of course, the Son of God, and he came to us to lead us to our salvation. But as we hear today, his work in us can only take place if we do something, if we receive him, if we bring him onto our team, to use today's metaphor. And we do that through the one thing that the Nazarenes didn't seem to have, through our faith. And so we nourish our faith, we witness it in our works, and we profess it in our prayers. And we will have our profession of faith, the Nicene Creed, as soon as the homily ends. But we also have little devotional prayers. And I think of the act of faith that very briefly reminds us and affirms in us who Christ is and why he came to us. And we profess our faith, we witness our faith in the hope that by doing so, Christ will come to us. And just like Roger Maris led the Yankees and then the Cardinals into the World Series, that in the fullness of our lives, Christ will lead us to victory.
There it is. $61. $5,000, somebody. He got his pitch. Look, $5,000. And here is the fellow with 61. You're seeing a lot today.